6 degrees Celsius. Into Monday evening, those showers will gradually clear their way off. It will take some time for parts of Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, but generally into Tuesday morning it will turn drier here as well. Another humid night for many of us, some mist and fog forming, but into Tuesday we're then watching this area of heavy rain that's going to start pushing in from the south. There is still some uncertainty in regards to the exact details of this, so do stay up to date with the forecast, but we are expecting it to generally push northwards again with some heavy rain, thunderstorms. Meanwhile, for Northern Ireland and Scotland, whilst the day will start drier, we could also see some thunderstorms developing during the afternoon. All that due to that area of low pressure, but it is eventually moving away to the north and east, allowing this ridge of high pressure to build its way in through for Thursday. So as we go over the next few days, generally the showers will become fewer and less intense.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
It's 9 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my big opinion, the leaked Partygate video proves what we feared all along. Whilst we stayed at home, the elite were laughing in our face. My Mark Meets guest is a British entrepreneurial icon, the co-founder of Reebok Sportswear. That's right, Reebok Sportswear, Joe Foster. He tells his incredible story before the end of the hour. In my Take at 10, I'm all for cleaning up the planet, but Labour's race for net zero is a race to the bottom. So a very busy 2 hours to come. We've got Edwina Currie, we've got Anne Whitaker, we've got Richard Tice and my all-star panel. Plus, it is Father's Day, so I want pictures of your dad. Hopefully you're lucky enough to have your dad with you, but if you've lost your dad, let's have the memories as well. mark@gbnews.com for your Father's Day pictures. Lots to get through. My big opinion next, and we'll be talking about that lockdown video. But first, the headlines with someone that always follows the rules, Ray Addison.
Thanks, Mark. Here's the latest from the GB Newsroom and our top story. The Met Police are aware and considering new footage showing Conservative staff partying during lockdown and joking about COVID restrictions. Michael Gove, the Levelling Up Secretary, has apologised, describing the behaviour as unacceptable. In the footage, which was obtained by the Mirror, Tory staff can be seen ignoring the government's social distancing rules at the height of the pandemic. 2 of the 24 people at that Christmas party were later handed honours by Boris Johnson. Mr Gove told us that disciplinary action has already been taken.
The reason why those steps were taken was to reduce the spread of the disease, in order to make sure that the pressures on the NHS were manageable, in order to make sure that we could treat people who were very ill. So, again, the actions here are deeply distressing, and I can only apologise to people that individuals behaved in this way. My understanding is that there was an investigation into the party when the photograph emerged, and people were disciplined.
Well, MPs will debate any possible punishment for Boris Johnson tomorrow after he was found to have misled Parliament over Partygate. The Privileges Committee recommended that the former PM should face a 90-day suspension had he not already resigned in advance of his judgment. Now, it's understood that his supporters are being encouraged to abstain, but former Brexit Secretary David Davis told Camilla Tominey he will support the committee.
One of the things about Parliament is it's the highest court in the land.
Yeah.
That creates a problem when you're coming to privileges. What's that problem? It's like having a trial in a village. Everybody knows everybody.
Yeah.
Nobody is entirely unbiased.
How do they know his own mind at the time?
They don't have to. What they know is what he knows.
Yeah.
If you go to a party, you know it was a party. You don't need an advisor to tell you.
The death toll caused by flooding following the destruction of Ukraine's Kakhovka Dam has now been risen to 45, with Moscow reporting 29 fatalities in Russian-held areas. The breaching of the dam in early June unleashed floodwaters across southern Ukraine, including areas occupied by Russian forces. It's destroyed land and cut off access to supplies. Kyiv says more than 3,600 people have been evacuated, while 31 are still missing. We're on TV, online, on DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now let's get back to Mark.
Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. In my big opinion, the leaked Partygate video proves what we feared all along. The elite were laughing in our face. In the big story, amid the Partygate video scandal, a civil war over Boris Johnson, and a flurry of by-elections they are likely to lose, are the Tories toast? Have they reached the point of no return? I'll be asking former Conservative Government Minister Edwina Currie and a man that wants to destroy the Tories, the leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice. Now, my Mark Meets guest is a British entrepreneurial icon, the co-founder of Reebok Sportswear, Joe Foster. He tells his incredible story before the end of the hour. In my take at 10, I'm all for cleaning up the planet, but Labour's race for net zero is a race to the bottom. Can Labour beat the SNP in Scotland, and should women convicted over abortion be pardoned? I'll be asking tonight's newsmaker, politics legend Anne Whitaker. And Mark Dolan Tonight is the home of the papers at 10:30 sharp. With 3 top pundits who haven't been told what to say and who don't follow the script. Tonight, Lynn May, Lord Taylor and Michael Crick. Tonight I'll be asking the pundits, have Brits lost the art of parenting? Should Miss England bring back the bikini parade? And what about sunscreen? Ought that to be tax-free? Plus your emails, especially the spicy ones, mark@gbnews.com. And it's Father's Day, so happy Father's Day to one and all. Here's a picture of my dear dad, Seamus Dolan, outside his pub in the 80s in Camden, Sir Robert Peel. My dad is a man I love hugely, and he's my total hero. So happy Father's Day to Seamus, a true legend. And I know that all of your dads are legends. So do send in pictures of your dads. Maybe you're not lucky enough to have your dad and it's just a memory. But either way, send in pictures of your dad, mark@gbnews.com. I believe we've got a couple of team photos as well. So producer Cal, I think we've got a picture of your old man, haven't we? Okay, we're getting that loaded. But there you go. So look, let's just say that producer Cal wants me to say to his dad, happy Father's Day, Kevin. What a guy. We love Kevin because he produced producer Cal. Okay, folks, lots to get through. My big opinion is first. The shocking lockdown-busting Partygate video, unearthed by the excellent Sunday Mirror, makes the Paris Hilton sex tape look positively dignified. Here it is. Posh boys and girls cavorting around Tory party campaign HQ in wacky Christmas jumpers, joking about bending the rules and making the rest of us, who were sat at home with just Netflix for company, look like complete mugs. The video is damning. Up till now, the rule-breaking within the corridors of power was limited to still images of the then Prime Minister Boris Johnson near a cake, or Rishi Sunak, the then Chancellor, a couple of feet from a glass of orange juice. Hardly crime of the century. But these pictures reflect the eye-watering contempt that those who were making the rules had for the great British public. Whilst they staggered from late-night office to late-night office, happily mask-free, and in the case of Matt Hancock playing tonsil tennis with his married advisor, the rest of us were prevented from meeting loved ones, from going shopping, from going to parties, from going to work, from going to the pub, or even from laying loved ones to rest. We followed the rules and they did not. More fool us. This video will understandably be leveraged by the Labour Party in the run-up to the next election as a reflection of how the Tories behaved during the pandemic. But they can't talk with this damning image of Keir Starmer sipping a beer at what we're told was a work-related event. Do me a favour. In the end, the real scandal were the COVID measures themselves. Most of it theatre, by the way, those filthy, worthless masks which advisors at Number 10 were told by their own scientific advisors don't work. Do you remember the bizarre arrows in supermarkets? Empty GP surgery waiting rooms, playgrounds bolted shut, the pathetic spectacle of social distancing in pubs and restaurants. Mask on, it's mask on to have a wee, mask off to sip your pint. Weird curfews at 10 p.m. because the virus doesn't like late nights. A woman arrested at the seaside for sipping a coffee on her own on a bench. Police drones out and about looking for solo ramblers in the Derbyshire countryside. The list goes on. Those in power knew what many of us thought all along, but were vilified for saying, that this was a potentially nasty virus and it took too many of us, but highly age-specific and health-specific, which is why focused protection of the vulnerable should have been the approach from day one. As they danced and cavorted and hugged, it's clear political insiders were not afraid of a virus which had a survivability rate of over 99%. They weren't worried about catching COVID or indeed giving it to their friends and loved ones. Proof, if you needed it, that the draconian Chinese Communist Party-inspired policy of lockdowns was a wild experiment backed up by no data, which served little purpose other than destroying the country. These unprecedented and unproven measures arguably failed as a health measure too, with excess deaths still sky high earlier this year, with numbers as bad as during the pandemic. 2,000 excess deaths a week in February, for example. You would expect excess deaths to be lower, not higher, after these supposedly life-saving measures. And our tragic COVID death toll was no better or worse than countries that didn't lock down at all. What a shambles. Personally, I can't think of a single COVID measure that was worth the damage of a broken economy, an insuperable national debt that we'll probably never tackle, an NHS waiting list of 7 million people, a mental health tsunami, and a generation of damaged kids. And that's before you even get to vaccine tyranny, with a jab arguably not needed by most of the healthy population, including children, and one which didn't stop transmission or infection. What a shambles. So they danced, they partied, and they mainlined Jacob's Creek for months on end, whilst we cowered at home, binge-watching The Tiger King, overdosing on banana bread and living in fear of our lives, thinking this was the bubonic plague. Well, a plague on all their houses. This damning video tells you everything you need to know about what top US medic Jay Bhattacharya from Stanford University in California has called the biggest public health mistake in history. Measures rolled out on a compliant population, but ignored by those in charge because they knew it was nonsense. So, the party's over for the idiots who have done so much damage to this country. We complied with the COVID madness because we wanted it to end, but our compliance meant it never did. Next time, just say no and throw a party of your own. Now, the governments are very clear, and most Western medical experts will argue that the lockdowns, the vaccine mandates, the masking, the social distancing saved thousands, if not millions, of lives. That's not my view, but what is yours? Mark at GBnews.com. Let's get reaction now from my team of pundits. Political commentator Lynn May, broadcaster and journalist Michael Crick, and John Taylor, the Lord Taylor of Warwick. Great to have all three of you with me. Michael, can I thank you for your summer apparel, by the way? Fine. It's like having the man from Del Monte sat in front of me. And I hope you.
Well, John is the same, yeah.
Well, yes, it's a very elegant pundit tonight. That was an inelegant video, wasn't it, of Tory party insiders cavorting, dancing, ignoring the rules. The elite laughing at us while we cowered at home in fear.
Well, you said in your monologue that they knew it was nonsense. I don't think they did know it was nonsense. I don't think you've got any evidence for that.
Well, they weren't wearing masks. They weren't socially distanced.
Well, that doesn't mean they knew it was nonsense. You know, there were times when I didn't wear masks.
They joked about bending the rules in the video, didn't they?
Sorry?
They joked about bending the rules in the video.
Yeah, sure.
Don't stream this because we're bending the rules.
They certainly did. I'm not justifying at all what they did in that video, and it was wrong. And I think they knew at the time that they were bending the rules and that was wrong. I think that to say that they knew it was nonsense is wrong on your part.
Because if you were in fear of your life, you would socially distance and you would wear a mask, wouldn't you?
Well, you might think, you might take the risk, and we all take the risk in life, don't we? We speed on the motorway, some of us. We do all sorts of things that take risks when we know that we shouldn't and that we are putting our lives in danger. And there came a point when, you know, we pushed the rules a bit. All of us did, I think. But they did it on a big scale in Downing Street and Boris Johnson and co. And I think overall it was right that the government forced us to be tough. And the lockdown was tough, and we now realise the parts of it were mad. I mean, you know, cleaning our hands all the time apparently was a complete waste of time. But I would say that in these circumstances, caution rather than sort of total freedom is important, and then you can relax later and learn the lessons
Michael,
from it.
We had caution, and what have we got to show for it? A waiting list of 7 million people, a broken economy.
Well,
and a
the waiting list
generation
of 7 million
damaged kids.
people is because.
Name me one measure within COVID that was effective.
Well, how would freedom have lowered the waiting list? Surely that was what they were worried about, that the hospitals would be bursting,
which they
unable
never
to cope, as they couldn't in Italy very early on, and that actually the fact that the hospitals had to treat so many COVID patients is why the waiting lists are so long, and lots of cancer patients and heart patients
a lot
had to
of it
wait.
was
But it's too much of me. Surely the other members of the
No, but
panel.
listen, that's it. But no, I appreciate, we come from a different place, and this show is all about opinion. I almost want to prioritise people that don't agree with me, because I think it's important that we hear the other side of the argument. Most of the public and most of the experts would be agreeing with you. So, Lord Taylor, what do you think?
Well, I mean, Richie Sunak must think he's based at number 10 Downing Street at the moment.
Yes,
He's got so many issues pouring down.
And he's a teetotaler, by the way, this poor man.
Yes,
he didn't have many parties.
Although he's an expert on wine, believe it or not. How you can be an expert on wine
But you
and a
see,
teetotaler?
These politicians.
As you know, the government's very keen on levelling up. And maybe those young boys and girls thought levelling up meant refilling their wine glasses.
It seems like they didn't struggle.
It's a disgrace.
with
And
that.
I feel very angry, and people couldn't bury their dead. They couldn't go to funerals. And to see that, and the dad dancing, and just the arrogance, really. I mean, it's appalling.
It is. I mean, do you think that this will be used against the Tories in the run-up to the next election? Could it lose the election for the Tories?
I don't think
that particular video?
I know it will be. People have long memories. People who couldn't go to the funerals of their children, their fathers, their mothers. Those memories won't go quickly.
Well, yes, Lynn May, it was David Cameron who had the letter from I think it was the Treasury Minister, Liam Byrne, outgoing Labour Minister in the Treasury. And it was the note saying, dear team, there's no money left. Well, I just wonder whether this video will be the equivalent for Labour.
Well, this is the thing. My thing is this. Either side you sit on this, whether you see it to be serious in COVID, it was a mere cold, everyone was scared initially, whatever the case may be, that video shows us that they clearly look like they knew something that we didn't. Because when the pandemic broke, we were all quite fearful because we didn't know what it was. I had to deliver food to my father. I was stopped by police twice, and I was given, the lowdown, questioned, made to feel almost like a criminal. For me to see that video of them dancing and we better not show anyone. So to me, this is not necessarily about COVID. It's more about how dishonest, like you said, how arrogant, and OK, did they know at that point that COVID wasn't that serious? Because why would you be holding hands, cavorting, frolicking, drinking, knowing that they probably had parents or grandparents that they were in close proximity with at some point? So was it that serious?
Well, if we look at masking...
What's the possible motive, though, in them thinking that COVID wasn't that serious and imposing rules on everybody? What would be the reason to do that?
Because of a culture of safetyism. Arse covering. Essentially, the politicians were worried that if the pandemic had played out badly, they would be blamed. They would go down in history as a bunch of murderous monsters.
In which case, they didn't know it wasn't that serious. They were seriously worried, like we all were, that it was serious.
They didn't look that worried. But I think it was also some sort of practice to see how quickly they could roll out laws of this nature.
Yes, and I think the other answer to your question, by the way, to cut the politicians some slack, Michael, would be the sage scientists, the modellers at Imperial College, who overestimated the threat of the virus in terms of potential fatalities. It was Neil Ferguson who predicted 500,000 deaths. That's what spooked the Prime Minister into having the first lockdown. So possibly they are culpable as well as the politicians.
I just wonder how many other videos there are out there, because the timing of this video...
And the police said there was no evidence as well. They said
there was just a photograph, and they thought that wasn't
enough. They said they had a thorough investigation.
But the photograph showed, them just standing around by drink and food.
OK. Well, folks, what do you think? Your reaction to that video, Mark at GBnews.com. And don't forget, it's Father's Day, so send in pictures of your dad, with us or not. We're happy to indulge in memories as well. But coming up next in the big story, amid the Partygate video scandal, a civil war over Boris Johnson, and a flurry of by-elections they're likely to lose, are the Tories already toast? I'll be asking former Government Minister Edwina Currie. But next, the leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, there you go. We've got some great Father's Day pictures coming in thick and fast. Happy Father's Day to one and all. Jane, what have we got? Who have we got here that we're celebrating? OK, this is Ray. And it's Ray Addison's dad. What a fine figure of a man with 2 pints. That's my kind of guy. Brilliant stuff. We'll keep those pictures coming in. Let me get to some responses now at GB News, mark at gbnews.com. They are all treasonable bastards, says David, not pulling his punches there in relation to those who ignored the COVID lockdown rules. How about this from Paul, who says, "Hi, Mark, we sat there night after night listening to the leaders of our country in one form or another telling us to wash our hands to the tune of Happy Birthday. You cannot make it up. Thanks to GPs abdicating their responsibilities whilst refusing point blank to see patients face to face, I developed incurable prostate cancer and must suffer indescribable pain every minute of every day and night. Now wash your hands of that." Paul, that's a devastating email. I'm so sorry to hear about what you're going through. And all I can say is, speaking on behalf of my viewers and listeners, we send all our love and strength to you as you navigate that awful illness. And I just hope this show can be a comfort to you. And I'm honoured that you're watching. So all the best to you, Paul. And do stay in touch and let us know how you're getting on. Alan says, Mark, if police are to reinvestigate Partygate parties, the same must apply to Beergate and Keir Starmer. Adrian says, hi, Mark. Were they partying because they'd all tested negative? And Christine, Mark, I agree with everything you said tonight. Many of us knew from the start this was an exercise in control. Thank you, Christine. Keep those emails coming, mark@gbnews.com. It's time now for the big story. And following the devastating Partygate video showing Conservative workers flagrantly ignoring lockdown rules, and amid an ongoing civil war over the resignation of Boris Johnson, and with by-elections on the way, which they are likely to lose, are the Tories toast? Have they reached the point of no return? Let's get the views now of the leader of Reform UK, who hopes to destroy the Tories at the next election, Richard Tice. Richard, can you take seats from Rishi Sunak?
Good evening, Mark. And yes, of course we can. And this video, I think, is probably the most shocking, appalling thing that any of us have seen throughout this whole utter shambles of the COVID process, the lockdowns. This video was taken on December the 14th, 2020, the very same day, Mark, that the then Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, texted, WhatsApped some of his colleagues saying, when do we deploy the new variant? How do we scare the pants off the population, to terrify us all, to keep us locked up in our homes so that they would ruin our Christmas? On the very same day, his colleagues in the Conservative Party were frankly getting pissed, partying. And now two of them at that party, one Sean Bailey, is now a peer of the realm. He's been given a peerage. One of the other people at that party has now got an OBE. I mean, up and down the country, people are shocked, appalled, horrified by what has gone on. And rest assured, we and the other political parties will be playing this video every month, every week, every day until the next general election. And we will seek to make sure that the British people never forget what has gone on here. Never forget that whilst they terrified the population, they knew that this virus, yes, for vulnerable and elderly people, it was a serious threat. But for the rest of us, we should have done what was proposed in the Great Barrington Declaration, which I and many others promoted literally at the same time, and we were smeared, we were vilified, we were shouted at, we were cut off, we weren't allowed to talk on broadcast channels or on the media about it, but we were right. And these people were taking the mickey. And I've never been more disgusted, revolted and appalled by this video.
Richard Tice, you've been a keen observer of politics for many years prior to your entry into it. Do you honestly think, hand on heart, that the Tories are now nailed on to lose the next election? Or is there a small amount of hope for Rishi Sunak that he could turn things round?
Zero. Niente. No chance whatsoever. The only question, Mark, is the scale of their defeat, which is hugely deserved, given not only this sort of stuff that's come out, that's appalled the population, but I just want to say very clearly, they've been in charge for 13 years. Does anybody feel better off? Yes or no? Does anybody feel that it's easier to see a GP? Yes or no? Does anybody feel it's safer on our streets? Yes or no? Does anybody feel that our immigration system is under control? Yes or no? And the answer to all of those questions is no. And for that reason, they will be demolished, they will be destroyed, and quite rightly, you cannot reward failure with more incumbency.
And Richard, you know as well as I do that share of vote is of no use in a first-past-the-post electoral system. So how many seats can Reform UK take?
But Mark, that's a great question. The more people that vote for us, the better. And of course, I'm not denying it. First past the post is very difficult for smaller parties. That's why we must move towards proportional representation, which is the system used by the vast majority of democracies in the Western world. I mean, first past the post, we share that with Belarus, for heaven's sake. It's not great company, is it? So look, we need to get rid of the first past the post system. The Tories apparently believe in competition. They believe in free markets. Well, if you believe in competition, you should actually believe in new ideas, new people, new parties, and compete with them. And the voters can decide who is the best, who's got the best ideas, who is the best group of people to run the country.
Well, of course, if you win, let's say, 5 or 10 seats or 15 seats at the next election, which is possible, you could hold the balance of power. Richard Tice could be a kingmaker. But let me now finally ask you, I've got Edwina Currie waiting in the wings, and you don't keep her hanging around, do you? But let me just ask you a question that you've got to answer 10 times a day. And you know what I'm going to ask you, which is by diluting the Conservative votes, you will be gifting the keys of number 10 to Keir Starmer.
No, Mark, no, Mark, no. No. They are two sides of the same socialist coin. High taxes, nanny state regulation, low growth. There's no difference between the two. If you want high growth, if you want higher wages, if you want to control immigration, the only people you can vote for is Reform UK. The con-socialist Tories and the Labour Party, they're exactly the same. There's no difference between them. And that's why people will make a very different choice at the next election.
Richard Tice, let's catch up soon. Good to have you on the show. Richard Tice is the leader of Reform UK, who will certainly be shaping the national conversation at the next election, which is about a year away or less. Watch this space. Don't forget, GB News will be your election station. Let's now speak to former Conservative government minister, best-selling author and radio and television presenter Edwina Currie. Edwina, can we now say for sure that the Tories have lost the next general election?
Not at all. I listened to Richard Tice with great interest. You know, the absolutely only thing he's got going for him, Mark, is that he's a good-looking man. Apart from that, he's got nothing. Absolutely, actually, the same is true of you. But, you know, you can say these things on GB News because you're not woke. It's wonderful. Richard Tice and the Reform Party are going to get a handful of votes, and I don't mean a handful of seats, a handful of votes. In this area where I live, in the High Peak, one of his candidates managed to amass all of 78 votes when standing in the recent local elections. We're talking about an area where we debate things a lot here, we talk about things a lot. This is Red Wall area. All they're going to do is make it harder for the Conservatives to win and easier for the Socialists. Let's give Labour its real name, socialism. They're going to make it easier for socialists to take over. And however mild-mannered somebody like Keir Starmer is, we're talking about Angela Rayner. We're talking about all sorts of people who you really would not want to be in government. People who, in fact, were very firmly rejected last time and who will make it much harder for us to get the benefits from Brexit, because most of them are Remainers. Let's be honest about that. In the south of England, they're going to make it easier. Reform will make it easier for the Lib Dems even to take some seats, and they're out-and-out Remainers. Now, that may be exactly what Richard Tice is doing. I mean, if you're a conspiracy theorist, you might find that actually he's in cahoots with some of these people. Actually, I think it is much better to vote for what you believe in. And I believe that the Conservatives have got the right ideas. I mean, I agree with you that it's looking a bit rocky at the moment. That video was just awful. What a bunch of entitled, arrogant, selfish kids. And the thought that they end up in the honours list just says to me, and I have never been in the honours list, that it's probably in many cases not worth being even considered for it. But there you go. No, that video is going to go on being shown. You are right about that. You are right that they are idiots, that you are right that many people will be very upset about that. But that's not a case for voting for the socialists, because, as you also pointed out, they were probably getting up to the same thing. Richard Tice is an irrelevance. And really, he doesn't deserve the amount of airtime that you are tending to give him. Am I making myself clear?
Yes, well, I think he'll be happy that he's received a compliment from you, at least, Edwina, although just cosmetic rather than policy-based. I think you're a little harsh on Labour, especially their Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, who just this week has done a U-turn on her green revolution because she wants to balance the books. Doesn't sound very socialist to me. I think Starmer is trying to craft himself as a centre-ground figure, the new Blair, perhaps. But let's talk about your party, the Tories. They are in trouble. They're in deep doo-doo. What will move the dial for Rishi Sunak? What needs to happen in the next 12 months?
What needs to happen in the next 12 months is that Rishi actually comes good on the promises that he's made. We are likely to see inflation coming right down. It is already coming down. It's already much lower than many of our European neighbours, and we're likely to see that coming down over the next few months, and we're likely to see bills, for example, particularly our fuel bills, our domestic fuel bills, coming down, and that's for everybody's benefit. And it's worth remembering that although there's a big fuss about mortgage interest rates and so on, a very large proportion of the voters do not have mortgages and therefore are not in that sense directly affected. What we also need to do is see more of the debate and the argument about immigration. You know, if you want to see a doctor in hospital, the doctor may well have been trained abroad. The nurse may well have come from another country, whether it's a Commonwealth country or somewhere in Europe. And we owe a great deal to the people who have chosen to come to this country. I had a drink earlier this evening with a very dear friend who originated in Moscow, in Russia, and told me that 4 days ago, he took British citizenship with my help. I'm very, very proud about that. He's an immigrant. Not all immigrants are bad. And I think most people in this country recognize that, and they recognize what we owe to those who have come and chosen to come to fill the gaps and take up the jobs that, dare we say it, many Brits actually don't want to do or aren't qualified to do. But what Rishi needs to do is get results. It's no good promising something without delivering. If he has made the promises back in January, and those promises need to be kept, and I think we've got enough time actually to be able to do that, and then we go to the electorate. Then we go to the electorate, not with good-looking idiots like Richard Tice, but we go to the electorate with solid achievement, and we're able to say, look, we've come out of COVID, we've come out of the tragedy that has imposed on us all, and we're looking forward to a much better future with a competent, strong government.
Edwina Currie, have a great week. We'll catch up again soon. Former Government Minister and television radio presenter Edwina Currie. We'll get the views of Anne Widdecombe after 10. And I'll be dealing with Ed Miliband, who, by the looks of it, wants to destroy the Labour Party a second time round. That's at 10 o'clock. But next up with the pundits, have Brits forgotten the art of parenting? Should Miss England bring back the bikini parade? And ought sunscreen to be tax-free? All of that next.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching. The people.
At 10 o'clock, I'll be talking about Labour's obsession with net zero, which, in my view, is a race to the bottom. But it's Father's Day, so happy Father's Day, one and all. I think we've got a picture of Jack and his daughter Sophie having a day out in Southwold. Lovely. We've also got our floor manager, Chloe. Happy Father's Day to Stephen. And thanks to a dad she loves very much. Brilliant stuff. Well, we'll get to more of your photos. We've got loads of photos, actually. I'm not sure we need a huge number more, but we're just loading them into the system, which is taking a little bit of a while, but we will get those out there very shortly. Reacting to the big stories of the day, political commentator Lynn May, broadcaster and journalist Michael Crick, and Lord Taylor, John Taylor, the Lord Taylor of Warwick. And now thousands of parents are being asked to sign a code of conduct with their children's schools to stop them abusing teachers online and turning up to school dressed inappropriately. What has become of us? Are British parents out of control? Have we lost the art of parenting? Lynn May.
See, when I was speaking to these two previously, I thought, you know, this is needed. But then I thought, there's enough laws already when it comes to indecent exposure, when it comes to Public Order Act, when it comes to ABH and so on and so forth. And a lot of the comments here are saying, you know, teachers are fearful of aggressive nature towards them from the parents or slurs online. And like I said, there's already laws in place. So how would they even police it? It's just something else. It's difficult enough to get the children into school. So I just want to know how that would work.
Well, yes, but what does it say about our collapsing society, Lord Taylor, that parents turn up to school in flip-flops and trackied bottoms and, you know, slippers sometimes?
Well, I'm the product of mixed parentage. My father was a man and my mother was a woman.
That's old school.
I say that because we're living in very woke times. Your attitude determines your altitude. So those parents who behave like that need to know that their bad attitude will affect their children. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Don't you think parenting has got quite sloppy these days, Michael?
Yes, I think it probably has. I'm probably guilty of it myself. But the code of conduct, I mean, how's this going to work? You sign a code of conduct saying I'm not going to turn up to the school in in flip-flops or, you know, slippers or pyjamas. I mean, and then what happens? They're going to take you to court for not... And then are they going to expel your child?
It says that you can be prosecuted if you break this code.
And we do know that
agree with you.
Teachers suffer from terrible abuse sometimes from parents, don't they?
Well, I mean, that is dreadful. That is dreadful that they do. And that needs to be dealt with. But you can probably deal with that under existing laws. And there's too much... I agree with Lynn, really. There's too much of an inclination in this country that solve any problem by a few new laws. And the number of laws, literally, you look at them on the shelf, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and yet most of the laws aren't needed because there are already laws there in place. But at the end of the day, you won't change really public opinion, I don't think. Well, you perhaps might do a bit, but you need cultural attitudes, don't you? You need to just...
It's about attitude. You can't enforce them.
No.
Too much law, too many offenders.
But doesn't society need to become more traditional and more disciplined? Don't you need, you know, and it doesn't matter if it's dad and dad or mum and mum. I don't think it's about, you know, the sort of traditional nuclear family, but just whatever the family, whoever the parent, they have certain standards.
What are those? How do you determine, or what is the bar for those standards?
Getting the kids to school on time, dressed properly, with breakfast in their stomach.
OK, you tell me what dressing properly is. For a woman.
I'm not that. I'm no Jeff Banks. But I mean, I would say.
Let's stop.
I would say no flip-flops or slippers or anything like that.
Okay.
You know, I think just covering your body so you're not
flip-flops.
You don't look like you're about to do a lap dance.
Flip-flops in summer is not that bad, surely, for a
why
parent.
not?
I mean, I think
it's how you carry yourself.
I think that a parent that collects their child from school should be dressed for a job interview. I think that would be a good look. Just smart and respectable.
But a lot of us work from home now, so we're not in, you know,
and you haven't got time to change. Yeah.
Well, I think the way you dress reflects your attitude, and I certainly wouldn't have turned up to pick my kids up from school a mess, because I think it reflects on them and it shows an attitude that I've got, which I don't want to be showing.
But I do also agree, because I actually spoke at a school recently and the deputy head said she's got a massive issue which has occurred recently where if they try and speak to the parents and say, you know, your child's done this, or there's immediate aggression. So there's not a lot of collaborative working with the teachers and the parents.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing from this story is that some parents have been turning up to pick up their kids effectively in a bikini. OK, so almost inappropriate.
And I suspect it's a minority. That's the problem with this story.
Well, it might be. Well, look, let's stay on bikinis, because the Miss England pageant, one of England's great contests, is in the news.
I'm worried about you.
It's not just thrown together, this show, you know. The beauty competition is reintroducing the bikini parade for the first time since 2002. So it's up to women or not whether they wish to participate on that. But this was made, a decision made by the director, who is a woman, Angie Beasley. So, listen, I want to ask you, what do you think? Is it time to bring back these bikini parades? The obvious person in the panel to ask is Michael Crick. What do you think?
I have no opinion on this at all. I mean, well, I do in a way. I would say if people want to participate in a beauty parade in a bikini, it's up to them. People wear bikinis on the beach. They wear them on the common. You know, went out on the common today, you would have seen people dressed in bikinis, and at a distance, it sometimes looked like they were even less than a bikini. It's up to them.
What do you think about this?
Yes, I think bring it back.
Why? Isn't it sexist? Isn't it demeaning to women?
Why?
Because it kind of characterises women as a piece of meat. The value is their body rather than their soul and their brain.
Well, I think I would be a liar to say if a part of our value isn't our looks, and we use it very, very well.
Yeah, we can see a bit of Lynn's legs there, for instance. I mean,
but real beauty is inner beauty. That's the problem with
No, real beauty is inner beauty. But someone made this interesting comment. A man said last week, he said, I don't like it when people say inner beauty because we don't have X-ray vision when we're looking at people, so I don't know about your inner beauty until I get to know you. So the first thing you see is someone's looks, and to be honest,
and that's wrong. That shouldn't be what you judge them on.
But we shouldn't be dictating to people really what they wear on these occasions.
It's up to them, no?
I mean, apart from in extreme circumstances of what they wear, and I go back to the previous answer. You shouldn't be regulating this by laws and regulations.
Yeah, we live in a Western world and we benefit from these freedoms. Well, we don't want to end up like Iran.
Does it tell us that wokeism is crumbling?
I hope so.
There you go. On that, we can agree. Coming up next, my Mark Meets guest is the founder of the sports brand Reebok. He tells his incredible story shortly. And at 10 o'clock, I'll be dealing with the Labour Party and Ed Miliband's race for net zero, which I believe is a race to the bottom. See you in 2.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
And action.
Sergeant Reed, my superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Fridays from 8, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll get to more of your brilliant Father's Day pictures after 10, but it's time now for this. Yes, it's time for Mark Meets, and one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the country, Joe Foster, the co-founder of the sports brand Reebok. In 1958, along with his brother Jeffrey, he decided to get into the shoe business, launching Mercury Sports Footwear after a dispute with another business of the same name. They renamed their business after a special breed of South African antelope called a grey Reebok. And with that, Reebok was born, and the rest is history. It's now one of the top athletic apparel brands in the world. Joe's amazing story is told in his book, Shoemaker, the untold story of the British family firm that became a global brand. It's out now. And Joe Foster, welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. Your grandfather was in the footwear business, a pioneer of the spiked running shoe. So this is a legacy which is reaching back several generations.
Well, thank you for the invitation, Mark. It's great to be here. It is. And you know, that introduction there, yes, indeed. You almost told the story, but yes, my grandfather started his business in 1895, and he invented the spike running shoe.
Indeed so. And so not just an interest in footwear runs in the family, but obviously the DNA of being very entrepreneurial.
Well, it probably does. I don't think you know this, but when we may be born with this DNA, I was certainly born with being an optimist, which I think if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you've got to be optimistic. And Jeff and I, of course, we worked in the family business, but unfortunately, my grandfather died in 1933. And I wasn't born until 1935, although I was born on his birthday, which was a bit sort of coincidental, but there we go. So I came up with his name. And his two sons, my father and uncle, they took over the business. And then, unfortunately, they didn't have his entrepreneurial vision, and they didn't get on together. In fact, they fought. A bit like Adi Dassler and Rudy Dassler, they just fought. Rudy left the Dassler company and set up Puma. Unfortunately, the Foster family just fought, just feuded. And of course, Jeff and myself, eventually, after doing national service, we came out and we realized that the J.W. Foster company was failing badly. couldn't persuade my father to change, so we had to change. And so eventually we left, and as you said, we set up our company, Mercury Sports Footwear.
And I know the defining theme of your business was about quality footwear, quality sports apparel. But what gave you the edge? What was the secret of your success? How did you build Reebok into being a global brand?
Well, I think it's either stupidity or something like that that just keeps you going. Because, number one, you need a bit of luck. Apart from sort of knowing the business, and Jeff and I, of course, we picked up the business on the shop floor, but we decided before we left we would go to college. We went to shoe college in the evenings, and the main thing that we picked up there was a lot of friends, people who could help us, so that when we left the business, if we needed materials, machinery, whatever, any help, we could just go to the college, and they gave it us freely. So that helped us, and I think that what we did was step by step. We got ourselves involved in local sports teams, groups, people, clubs, whatever, and we slowly built our business. When we left in 1958, Adidas had come into the UK and they'd taken the football or the soccer market. And that would have been too expensive for us to go into. So we decided track and field, and what we looked for was white space. Where are they? Where are they not? Where can we go? Which is our space? So white space is what we look for. And we became probably the UK's #1 sports, we'll say, track and field company. We went into running. And luckily for us, running was growing. Not here, but in America. And so we got to a certain size in the UK, and I just thought, well, what do we do? Do we go into other categories? Can we go into other categories? Or Adidas, Puma, and other companies too big for us to fight. So why don't we just expand our market in our existing category, which was running? And in America, I wanted that. So in 1968, I'm reading a magazine, I think it was Eurosport, and the British government were advertising in there, we want you to export. And they wanted us to export to America.
And the rest is history. Joe, it's an incredible story. I wish we had longer, but you've created a remarkable British brand. The book is out now. It's called Shoemaker, The Untold Story of the British Family Firm that became a global brand. Next up, I'll be dealing with the Labour Party and the race for net zero.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News, the people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the people's channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christys, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel. Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my take at 10, I'm all for cleaning up the planet, but Labour's race for net zero is a race to the bottom. I'll be dealing with Ed Miliband, who in my view is going to destroy the Labour Party for the second time in his career. Speaking of Labour, can they beat the SNP in Scotland? And should women convicted over abortion be pardoned? I'll be asking tonight's newsmaker, politics legend, Anne Widdecombe. And Mark Dolan Tonight is the home of the papers, with tomorrow's front pages from exactly 10:30 sharp. So a busy hour to come. It's Father's Day, so happy Father's Day one and all. We've got so many pictures of your dads coming in. Some are with us, some sadly passed, but we'll be celebrating your dads in just a few minutes. Looking forward to that. It's a busy hour to come. I'll be dealing with Labour and their obsession with net zero after the headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Mark. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. And in breaking news, footage has emerged which appears to show the Prime Minister joking about trans people at a meeting of Tory MPs.
Davey has been very busy. Like me, you were probably seeing that he was busy trying to convince everybody that women clearly had penises. And I was reflecting, you all know I am a big fan of everybody studying maths to 18. But it turns out that we need to focus on biology to 18.
Well, in the video, which was obtained by Pink News, Rishi Sunak can be heard criticising Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey at a meeting of the 1922 committee. He also jokes that the country needs more biology lessons. GB News has approached Number 10 for comment, but they are yet to respond. The Met Police say they are aware and considering new footage which shows Conservative staff partying during lockdown and joking about COVID restrictions. Michael Gove, the Levelling Up Secretary, has apologised, describing the behaviour as unacceptable. In the footage obtained by the Mirror, Tory staff can be seen ignoring the government's social distancing rules at the height of the pandemic. 2 of the 24 people at that Christmas party were later handed honours by Boris Johnson. Mr Gove told us that disciplinary action has already been taken.
The reason why those steps were taken was to reduce the spread of the disease, in order to make sure that the pressures on the NHS were manageable, in order to make sure that we could treat people who were very ill. So again, the actions here are deeply distressing, and I can only apologise to people that individuals behaved in this way. My understanding is that there was an investigation into the party when the photograph emerged, and people were disciplined.
MPs will debate any possible punishment for Boris Johnson tomorrow after he was found to have misled Parliament over Partygate. The Privileges Committee recommended that the former Prime Minister should face a 90-day suspension had he not already resigned in advance of that judgment. Now, it's understood that his supporters are being encouraged to abstain, but former Brexit Secretary David Davis told Camilla Tominey he will support the committee.
One of the things about Parliament is it's the highest court in the land.
Yeah.
That creates a problem when you're coming to privileges. What's that problem? It's like having a trial in a village. everybody knows everybody.
Yeah.
Nobody is entirely unbiased.
How do they know his own mind at the time?
They don't have to. They don't, what they know is what he knows.
Yeah.
If you go to a party, you know it was a party. You don't need an advisor to tell you.
The United Nations says that Russia has declined their request to access Russian-occupied areas affected by the flooding from the Kakhovka Dam. Now, this comes as the death toll has now risen to 45, with Moscow reporting 29 fatalities in Russian-held areas. The breaching of the dam earlier this month unleashed floodwaters across southern Ukraine, including areas occupied by Russian forces. It's destroyed land and cut off access to supplies. Kyiv says more than 3,600 people have been evacuated, while 31 are still missing. We're on TV, online, on DAB+ radio and on TuneIn 2. This is GB News. Back now to Mark Dolan.
Thanks, Ray. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. Can Labour beat the SNP in Scotland, and should women convicted over abortion be pardoned? I'll be asking tonight's newsmaker, politics legend Anne Widdecombe. Mark Dolan Tonight is the home of the papers, with tomorrow's front pages at exactly 10:30 sharp, with full pundit reaction. Plus, my pundits will be nominating their headline heroes of the day and the back page zeros. Big stories, big guests, and always big opinions. Let's start with my take at 10. If you thought flip-flop Starmer was a worry in number 10, just look who he'll be taking into office with him. Bacon sandwich eating Supremo and eco-activist Ed Miliband, who the Sun newspaper today report lavished praise on Extinction Rebellion protesters all the way back in 2019. The shadow climate change secretary, whose radical plans for the environment get me hot under the collar, lavished praise on the eco-yops for the fantastic success of their exciting activism. He added, "I think it is incredibly well thought through and incredibly important that it's sustained and deepened." That is a quote. As the Sun point out, Miliband was well aware at the time that Extinction Rebellion had already unleashed mayhem on our streets, causing criminal damage by blocking bridges, roads, and even Parliament itself. And he wanted more. Not only do you have to worry about a Labour government yielding to the union's inflation-busting demands, which is inevitable given the fact that they bankroll the party, not only do you have to worry about an increase in public spending in a country that already lives beyond its means, but a rabid, frothing eco-agenda might just finish this country off altogether. Now, fair play to the impressive Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who has done a screeching U-turn on their crazy idea of spending £28 billion a year, every year, on a so-called green revolution. An idea which was, you guessed it, the brainchild of Ed Miliband, a man who double-crossed his own brother to run for the Labour Party leadership and ultimately did such a bad job as leader of the opposition, he lost an election to a massively unpopular David Cameron. Miliband's brother David was a shoo-in for the Labour leadership, and I admired him. He was a centrist in the mould of Blair and would likely have reached number 10. Instead, Red Ed, as he was labelled by the tabloid press, given his left-leaning instincts, ultimately prevailed. Well, Red Ed is now Green Ed, and his ideological net zero ambitions look set to panic voters and could derail Labour's electoral prospects. To destroy a political party once is unfortunate, twice is careless. Keir Starmer has already had to U-turn on banning new oil and gas licences in the North Sea, which probably has Ed Miliband fuming. Now, it's very clear that voters want to clean up the planet. Most people are concerned about climate change and bringing emissions down. Who doesn't want cleaner air and less pollution? And green investment potentially brings jobs, energy security and economic growth. But it's about the pace of change And it's about doing it properly and sensibly, rather than the hysterical approach of the likes of Miliband, who will have you believe the planet will have burnt down by next Tuesday. We saw that kind of hysteria around COVID, and look at the damage it's done. Well, an unchecked, maniacal green agenda will be like lockdowns times 100, especially in terms of its impact on society, our quality of life and the economy. When it comes to the science around global warming, my mind is open, and I would pitch for something I'm calling smart net zero, or smart zero if you prefer, which charts a course towards lower emissions, but done with public consent, through democratic means, and with the interests of the British economy and the British people at its very heart. From where I'm sitting at the moment, Labour's eco plans look to involve endless borrowing and higher costs for British consumers, whether it's green taxes on fuel and electricity, expensive and unreliable heat pump boilers, or electric cars that you need a second mortgage to pay for. I'm not the only one pushing for this idea of smart zero, which combines both the national interest and the future of the planet. Ultra-woke President Joe Biden, when he's not having a nap, has declined to set any kind of net zero target for America and has continued to approve new oil and gas drilling in Alaska. And don't forget, America is the Saudi Arabia of fracking. Bizarrely, we've signed a deal to import shale gas from the United States, even though we've got shale, oil, coal and gas here in the UK. Make it make sense. Meanwhile, the French President Emmanuel Macron has said that Europe has gone far enough in passing laws to cut carbon emissions. The EU have done a U-turn on axing petrol and diesel cars, and Germany is tackling their energy crisis by, wait for it, reopening coal mines for thermal coal. The tide is turning on net zero mania, particularly given the fact that countries like Brazil, India, the United States and China continue to burn fossil fuels for fun. But the Labour shadow cabinet didn't get the memo. Be careful what you wish for. Go woke, no smoke. Bringing down emissions is a worthy aim, but it must be done smartly and over time, with all countries pulling their weight. Labour's race to net zero is a race to the bottom. What do you think, Mark at GBnews.com? Labour would argue that the planet is heating up, the carbon emissions are contributing to that, and that Britain must show leadership in this area. They would argue that if you borrow money to invest in renewables, you have energy security and you have economic growth and jobs. So they would argue it would be very, very popular and very successful. That's not my view, but what's yours? Do get those emails in. Reacting to my take at 10, political commentator Lynn May, broadcaster and journalist, the brilliant Michael Crick, and last but not least, Lord Taylor of Warwick. Lynn May, your reaction to Labour's eco plans?
I just think now is not the right time. The Labour Party was supposed to be the party for the working man, for people that come from, socio-economic poorer backgrounds. And if we look at what it takes to actually get to net zero, every single household, it's going to cost about £10,000. And we are not even in the top 10 in terms of countries with emissions. So I don't understand why Labour is leading on this.
Lord Taylor.
Well, Labour used to be the party of the working class. Now it's the party of the woking class. It's about the pace of change. We understand that we need a clean environment, but their plans are unrealistic. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And their plan, which is a hectic race, will bankrupt the country and destroy working people, the very people they should be representing. It's lunacy.
Michael Crick, I think we can agree that Labour are currently sitting pretty ahead in the polls, but I wonder whether their push for net zero, not necessarily the idea of it, but the timeline, could derail their election hopes.
I don't see why at all. the public go along with net zero. That's why all the political parties go along with net zero, the main political parties. You accuse Ed Miliband of being hysterical. It's you, Mark, that is being hysterical.
Never.
You accuse Ed Miliband of being obsessive. Well, he's right to be obsessive. We should all be obsessive about the need to reduce emissions. Lynn says now is not the right time. She's right. The right time should have been decades ago, and we are way behind in what we should have been doing to deal with this. And as you say, among some of the sensible things, few sensible things in your rant, that Labour's plans, and indeed the Conservatives' plans as well, will involve huge investments. Most economists would agree, we all agree as individuals, it's right to borrow to invest. We need to invest in all sorts of things. This will provide jobs, it will boost the economy, and it will be doing our bit to save the planet. That is the obligation on us. We can't just keep putting it off and saying, oh, it's somebody else's responsibility, or it's our children's responsibility, or our grandchildren's responsibility. It's our responsibility, it's British people's responsibility, as much as it's the responsibility of citizens of every other country.
But I don't like how this whole save the planet malarkey is always spoken about, because even if we look at the huge push towards electric vehicles, the production of electric vehicles, the emissions are horrendous. And if we look at also the mining that's happening in the Dom Republic of Congo at the moment, in terms of the raw materials needed for all of these net zero, you're seeing children mining, you're seeing unethical practices, even when it came to big corporations being held accountable in court. So how is this saving the planet?
Everybody agrees on the objective. It's how you get there. And Labour's plans are unrealistic. You can't bankrupt the economy in order to save the environment.
I don't believe that what Labour is doing will bankrupt the economy, John. It will actually help save the economy.
Remember last time Labour were in power?
Frequently in history, the way of saving the economy is to invest, as we have seen in the 1930s and on many occasions since then. As for the point about carbon emissions being involved in the production of electric cars, obviously there is some expense in that term, but the idea is that in the long term, the electric cars will save on the emissions. Although, of course, generation of electricity isn't...
I remember when they had this massive campaign for diesel vehicles and everyone ran out and got a diesel vehicle. Now they're trying to pull back on diesel vehicles because apparently, no, they're not the best thing for the planet. And I'm starting to believe that governments and corporations, car manufacturers, have nice little saucy deals which are making us consistently, every 10 years, change our cars for the benefit of their pockets as opposed to really saving the planet.
Well, there may be an element of truth in that when it comes to diesel cars, but I do think that overall what Labour are planning is absolutely the right thing to do, and if we can get there before 2050, then so much the better. We might in this country. I can't see anybody else doing it. And the way in which people... I mean, Mark says it's wonderful the way all these other countries are now reneging on the promises that they made
including the EU.
COP26, including the EU and Germany. I think that is dreadful, absolutely appalling. I mean, there's going to be nothing left for our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren at this rate.
All right, well, look, what's your view? I'm pitching to the British people the idea of replacing net zero with smart zero, OK? That is exclusive to Mark Dolan tonight, and that is lowering emissions, but in the national interest, with the economy and the British quality of life at the forefront. Plus, it involves every other country doing their bit too, including America and China. But let me know your thoughts, especially if you don't agree. Mark at gbnews.com. Next up, can Labour beat the SNP in Scotland? And should women convicted over abortion be pardoned? I'll be asking tonight's newsmaker, politics legend Anne Widdecombe. She's next.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions, and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio, and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Welcome back to the show. Listen, we're dealing with so much breaking news. Rishi Sunak, a secret tape of him speaking to Tory MPs, making jokes about trans people. We will bring you reaction to that at exactly 10:30 when we've got tomorrow's papers. So many big stories that we need to discuss, including the electoral chances of the Tories. Have they reached rock bottom now? Is it game over? Have they reached the point of no return? All of that to come. But it's time now for The Newsmaker, in which we speak to a fearless commentator on the big story of the day. Before we do that, have we got any Father's Day pictures? Let's do it. Go, go, go. Now, this is Yvonne, who says, I lost my dad last August, truly missed. What a fine figure of a man. Thank you for sending that one in, Yvonne. Amelia says, happy Father's Day to my dad, Paul, who passed away on the 3rd of March, 2023, and was a big fan of the show. That's wonderful. Thank you, Amelia. Are these in order? I do hope they are, by the way. Brilliant. This is one of my lovely viewers and his dad, who he says he wouldn't be anywhere without. Look at those 2 lads. That's what I call good genetics. This is Sue's dad, Peter, and Dylan the dog. 2 babes, let me tell you. And this is from John. And look at that, a lovely old school picture of a very, very respectable father there with a bowler hat. You see, that's how you should be dressed when you pick your kids up from school, right? Not flip-flops and a bikini. It is time now for The Newsmaker. I got you all excited. Anne Widdecombe waiting in the wings. We're going to be talking in just a moment about whether women convicted over abortion should receive a pardon. But first, following Nicola Sturgeon's arrest at a party mired in scandal, can Labour beat the SNP at the next election? And do the SNP's travails all but guarantee Keir Starmer the keys to number 10? Anne Widdecombe, what's your view on this? Can Labour move the dial north of the border?
Well, whether or not they actually beat the SNP, they can certainly make a huge dent. I don't think there's any argument about that. That is going to happen. That, of course, is good news for Keir Starmer. It's very bad news for Rishi Sunak. But it isn't just the recent scandals. It's the fact that the SNP has performed very badly on all the big indicators, health, education, and gradually that message was beginning to get through. And the only people really who will support the SNP are those who put independence ahead of absolutely every other consideration and who seriously believe that it is deliverable. I wouldn't be at all surprised if Labour did beat them, but they'll make a big dent anyway.
And the Tories, they don't have a cat's in hell chance of winning many seats in Scotland, do they?
No, I was only thinking today, I can remember going back into the 70s and 80s when the Conservatives held seats in Scotland, lots of seats in Scotland. I was up there in the 74 campaign, the October 74 campaign, and we had lots of seats, and it was perfectly normal and it was taken for granted. And that has all but disappeared, and there's going to be a lot of work have to be done by the Conservative Party. They won't be able to do it in time for next year's election, I'm afraid. I think Labour will be the beneficiary.
Well, indeed. So do you think Labour are now home and hosed?
Well, I wouldn't ever say that. Because I vividly remember the 1992 election. We were supposed to lose that. Right up till 3 a.m. in the morning, BBC was telling us we'd lost it. Actually, we'd won it by that stage. And everybody thought the Conservatives were going to lose, and I was a Conservative then, we won. In 1970, everybody thought Labour was going to win. Ted Heath won. So it doesn't actually follow that because things are very bad now, and they are very bad now, and if there are a general election tomorrow, you're right, Conservatives just done and dusted and gone. But it isn't tomorrow. It's next year. There is, I think I've said this on your programme before, there is time, but they're not taking any advantage of it.
Anne Widdecombe, a cross-party group of MPs and peers, has called on the Prime Minister to pardon a woman who was jailed last week for inducing an abortion after the legal limit. Do you think that women that break the law and have an abortion should receive a pardon?
Absolutely not. And certainly this case was appalling. This was not a baby before the 24-week limit. It was actually a baby coming up for 34 weeks. It was a baby that, if it had been born, would have been born alive and viable. And if the mother had then killed it, or anybody else had killed it, then it would have been called murder. Now, I cannot see that 2 weeks before, when you've got a fully formed child there, with children surviving 10 weeks earlier than that, that there is any excuse at all for what she did. And when I hear people talking about, oh, well, she was only accessing healthcare. No, she wasn't. She was procuring the death of a child who was capable of being born alive.
Anne, I wish we had longer. We'll catch up in a week's time. Former government minister, best-selling author and television personality, the brilliant Anne Widdecombe. Very much the jewel in the crown of Mark Dolan tonight, every Sunday. Now, folks, we've got the papers and we've got some amazing stories coming in thick and fast. And we've got this video. It's breaking. It's Rishi Sunak joking about trans people in front of Tory MPs. Could it be damaging? We'll have a listen after this. You can take your own view about whether you think this is bad news for him, or is it just Rishi being anti-woke? Is that the hill to die on? Quite an explosive bit of audio that I'll be playing you in just a moment. All of tomorrow's papers with full pundit reaction and more of your Father's Day photos as well. See you in a couple of minutes.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
And action.
Sergeant Rebecca Reed, my superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Fridays from 8, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
welcome back to the show. We've got tomorrow's papers hot off the press, but it's Father's Day, so first, here are some of my wonderful viewers and listeners' dads. Jackie says, this is my lovely father. Joseph, happy Father's Day, Dad. Watching you with him now. Well, look, thank you for that. I like that beard. A fine figure of a man. Speaking of which, this is Maddie's dad, David, enjoying a seafood sharing platter to himself. Now, Maddie is the brilliant producer of this show, who is such a star, and well done, Dad, for giving Maddie to the world. He looks too young to be Maddie's dad. He must have been 11. That's fine. Also, my other incredible producer, Mescana, says, happy Father's Day, Pops. And your dad, Mescana, he's proper cool, isn't he? Look at that, in his jeans. Rolling back the years. We love Mescana and we love Maddie. And Audrey has sent in a picture of her father with a message. My lovely dad remembered on Father's Day. Happy days on his narrow boat. Wonderful stuff. I do love those vintage pics. Let's have a look now at tomorrow's papers, hot off the press. And we have the Daily Mail. Oh, let's have a little. Go for it. Go for the little sting job. There you go. It's not just thrown together this show. Let's have the Daily Mail. And they lead with bank told to wait before imposing another rate hike. Interest rates must be paused to spare struggling households, experts have said tonight. The Bank of England is poised to impose a 13th consecutive increase on Thursday, a strategy one senior broker described as insanity. The base rate is set to go up from 4.5% to 4.75%, the highest level since 2008. Some analysts say the bank might even opt for 5%. Police probe as Gove condemns terrible Tory lockdown party video in a story that rumbles on. Next up, we've got the Telegraph. Starmer, I'll push onshore wind to hit net zero, tying very much in with the Take at 10 monologue that you've just heard. Sir Keir Starmer will scrap the ban on new onshore wind farms as one of his first acts in Downing Street if Labour wins next election. The opposition leader will vow to throw everything at his net zero agenda by firing the starting gun on a race to build more turbines across the country. UK faces mortgage catastrophe, says Lucy Allen, Tory MP. And BMA to blame Cameron for NHS pandemic failures. David Cameron's programme of austerity is to blame for the National Health Service's disastrous failures during the pandemic, this according to the British Medical Association. Oh, there's a picture of Nicola Sturgeon as well. Do you remember her? I'll be back this week. She's gone now because we've got The Guardian next. Pressure on Sunak as Met Police consider latest Partygate video. Home Office disbands Windrush Reform Unit is the other story in The Guardian. The Eye newspaper, banks told to help ease soaring cost of mortgages as rates rise. Lenders will be urged to do more to help homeowners later this week, as interest rates are set to rise for the 13th time in less than 2 years. Banks are under pressure after the Eye newspaper revealed they pocketed almost £5 billion by hiking home loans faster than savings as house prices fall for the first time in 2023. Independent. Children's crusade for justice against abuse hospitals, and Tories face outrage over lockdown party video. Now we've got the Metro next. You're out of order. Gove's Partygate apology after Tory drinks do video emerges. As long as we don't stream that we're like bending the rules is one of the comments made by one of the party goers. Michael Gove has apologised, but it's definitely a video that will continue to haunt the Conservatives. And last but not least, in the Daily Star, drinkflation crisis, the great beer robbery. Brewers accused of cutting alcohol levels to save money. Beer firms accused of reducing the amount of alcohol in pints to save millions claim punters, in fact, want weaker drinks to boost their health. Steady, say the Daily Star. Those are your front pages. Let's get reaction now from my top pundits. Political commentator Lynn May, broadcaster and journalist Michael Crick, and John Taylor, the Lord Taylor of Warwick. Lord Taylor, does being a Lord ever lose its lustre, its novelty?
I never had it.
Really?
It's a working job. It's not about ego and feeling grand. You're there to do a job.
You get good tables in restaurants.
What's the perks? Yeah, what's the perks?
I don't know.
Is there a Mrs. Taylor? Is there a Lady Taylor?
There is a Lady Taylor, and
right.
she's from Dallas, Texas, and she's a
It's quite a good club, though, isn't it, the House of Lords?
It depends how you treat it. I don't treat it like a club. It's a place to go to work.
Yeah, well, listen, that's how Parliament used to be before the parties. And this is a story that's all over the front pages. Police probe as Gove condemns terrible Tory lockdown party video. We've got that Telegraph story on Net Zero, which chimes very much with what we discussed at 10 o'clock. So really, you know, it's all bad news, bad news, bad news. The story that caught my eye, Michael Crick, was actually in the Eye. And this idea of pressure on banks to help people with their mortgages. And indeed, the Bank of England themselves being leaned on not to hike rates any further. That's quite unprecedented, given the fact that they're independent.
It is. And, of course, the other point that the Eye make is this whole issue of how savings rates don't seem to go up as fast as borrowing rates, which is outrageous, really.
Yeah.
And it's a failure of the market. You would have thought, in a market system, there would be banks coming out and say, "Oh, we'll offer you a bit more," and it would all go up. And why doesn't that happen? To the extent to, I mean, the problem you now have, as you say, is independence of the Bank of England, and therefore the government isn't meant to be putting the pressure on the bank on these issues anymore. Some people might say that independence given by Gordon Brown was a mistake.
It was only a few years ago. The banks were desperate to be bailed out.
Yeah.
And they were bailed out by the public. And now, come on, let's have some love back from the banks.
Well, yes, I mean, the big issue, Lynn May, is even if viewers and listeners watching don't have a mortgage, the issue of mortgage rates affects the economy because it sucks money out of the economy. Our economy is based on consumption. I think it's about 65% of our economy is people buying things, going out to dinner and going shopping and purchasing services. Well, if they've got an extra £3,000 on their mortgage every year, they're going to buy less.
I don't know, though, because inflation is as a result of us being able to buy more. Rates have historically been really, really low compared to, let's say, for example, when my mum first took out her mortgage, it was like 14%. So I think we have got used to, we've been spoiled at these really low rates, and anyone who understands economics should have known it's not going to stay this low for the simple fact of when the crash occurred. But what I would say is, since 2021, we have had 12 hikes. And I think even though on one hand I would say, you know, be realistic, it can't become this drastic this fast, and that's going to be the problem. I've got several friends who literally were paying $800 for their mortgage, and now they're looking at $1,500. People are not going to get salary increases. Where are they going to get the money from?
Yeah, Lynn is absolutely right. I mean, the younger generation, if they could afford the deposit and everything, they never realised that mortgage rates might go above 1 or 2%.
Yeah.
Whereas my generation, we were used to really high mortgage rates, and so therefore I think we were much more cautious about it. And of course,
property prices were a lot lower. They were a lot. If you're looking
at
and
it had of course it has the effect on the property prices too. So
but we have a problem. We need to grow the economy, and we have a skills shortage, and this is linked to the immigration problem we have. So all of these things are connected.
Could taxpayer millions be justified to support homeowners and those with a mortgage? Could that be justified? Some kind of furlough for people with
I
a
want to
mortgage?
see more help for the small businessman. The high street is dying. Business rates are zooming up. We've neglected these people, and that's the heart of the Tory support. I think they're very foolish to ignore these people. The small businessman, the high street.
I think maybe not. I would like to know what assistance or bailing out the homeowner looks like. Does that
Because renters won't like the sound of that, will they?
Well, to be honest, they may, because if the landlords get help, that would be their way of actually saying,
Well,
why
balance.
are you increasing...
It's not either or, you need balance.
Why are you increasing my rent by $400 if the government's just helped you with your mortgage?
Michael Crick, do you think the public would swallow support for homeowners? I mean, what used to have on
I think they would.
Tax relief.
I think they would, but I don't know how you make an impact without an enormous, massive cost. And I just don't know how you'd ever get it through the Treasury, frankly. In the current surge.
Starmer in the Telegraph, Michael, I'll push onshore wind to hit net zero. That has echoes of our conversation at 10 in My Take at 10, which you can catch on Twitter at GBNews now. Ben has put that one out online. But Starmer, I mean, he's flip-flopped on this, hasn't he? Because, yes, he's Mr. Net Zero, but then he's changed his mind about not having any new oil and gas licences after the next election.
He just wants to
on
win.
everything.
He doesn't have
he's just saying anything at this point.
And I wish he would be a bit more consistent.
Yeah.
He's absolutely right on this thing in terms of onshore wind. But then, of course, you get local opposition. I know. So you get loads of local opposition, and that's what frightened the I think it was the Cameron government, wasn't it, that banned it. But it's mad not to have more onshore wind. Like you drive around Germany, it's everywhere. OK, it's unsightly. What?
We don't have that much wind.
Well, in certain parts of the country we do. Maybe not in London.
Not enough to actually say that this is our main
These
source
aspirations are fine. It's how you achieve it. That's the problem with Starmer. He's a blank, slate.
Isn't the answer with energy, Lord Taylor, a mix?
It is a mix.
That you have a bit of fossil fuel as you navigate towards a green future.
My favourite word in life is a very boring word, balance. It's a mix. It's not either or.
You won't get on GB News.
I mean, the real problem, isn't it, that it's got to be a combination of renewables and nuclear. And your trouble is building nuclear power stations takes forever.
Absolutely.
And in the meantime, you've got to bridge that gap. And the trouble is the wind doesn't always blow and the sun doesn't always shine.
Don't we have the Liberal Democrats to blame for all of this? Because in the coalition years, it was Ed Davey who blocked fracking and Nick Clegg who blocked a nuclear programme. And Nick Clegg quoted 15 years ago, it was almost, wasn't it, 13 years ago, saying, I'm the Deputy Prime Minister and it's thanks to me we won't have any new nuclear power stations. He said the reason why is because they won't come good until at least 2023.
Fracking, I think you'll find it's some local
Language,
people
please. Family show.
I think it was with fracking.
Not on my backyard.
I think you will find it's local people in the areas where the fracking might take place, like parts of Lancashire, and local MPs.
Because of tiny earthquakes in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, the trouble with all energy developments is they are big things. They involve lots of digging in dirt and wires, and people don't like them.
Yeah.
But
Michael, you're
going to have to start being tough.
Look at you, Mr. Happy Clappy Net Zero. I'm surprised you're not wearing sandals today. But what about Germany as a case in point? They've spent hundreds of billions of pounds on renewables over the last 10 years. Yeah. And just up until last year, they were reliant on Russian gas. Yeah. So it's not the best example, is it?
No, and they closed down their nuclear industry. In really an overreaction. Well, we all overreacted the Chernobyl disaster of '86. And if we carry on developing nuclear, and there was a massive green opposition to nuclear at that time. Everybody was going down this way, but it's left us naked, frankly, given developments in
But also,
in
but
Europe.
Germany's not the best advert for renewables either. I mean, I think what's not accepted by Starmer and his ilk is that these renewables are a gamble. It's an experiment. And also, you don't get sort of the back-end cost of these renewables, do you? So, for example, the environmental impact of solar panels, the fact that they stop working after 10 to 15 years. What about the energy to produce the concrete for those wind turbines and the piping to get them to the land?
Well, I dealt with this point earlier. Of course, there is an element of emissions to actually do the investment, but in the long term, it is a saving.
Well, what's the point in a windmill if you've got to change it every 15 years?
Well, you have any energy form. You have to change.
Blow in the
if you have a
summer.
boiler, you have to change it every 15. If you have a car, you have to change it every 15 years. I mean, what?
No, but this is about the source of energy, and gas never lets you down, does it?
We have archaic planning laws.
Yeah,
I used
we
to
do.
be a barrister. I was involved in planning cases that went on for 20, 25 years.
Yeah.
So that's a fundamental problem.
That's what hinders a lot of our growth across the board. Even if you look at trains, HS2, it's literally not in my backyard, whereas other countries, it's like, we are going to do this, get out the way, get on with it.
Yeah, it's partly because we're in Ireland and it's all a bit more crowded.
Governments don't have a long-term vision. They just plan for the next election, basically.
Michael, just a couple of seconds. You've got your finger on the political pulse. I know that there are plenty of Labour supporters who will love this push for net zero, and it will play brilliantly in London and the home counties. What about those red wall constituencies, lots of viewers and listeners to this show and this channel who have no truck with net zero? What's Starmer? How does he square that circle?
I don't know. I'm not Starmer. I'm not the Labour Party. I agree there is a problem there, bound to be, but you have to persuade those people. They are traditionally Labour. We're the people that helped areas like you in the past, and we will be in the future. Has got to be his pitch.
Well, look, folks, my amazing pundits, aren't they fantastic tonight? They're going to nominate their headline heroes and back page zeros. Plus, I've got some sparkling front pages. We've got the Times and the Express next. Much more of this to come. See you in 2.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the show. More front pages, but it's Father's Day, and so Sam says, hi, I'm Sam, a regular viewer. This is my old man and inspiration, Jerry. Can we just talk about Jerry's abs? Seriously, look at that. Daniel Craig, eat your heart out. Well done, Jezza. Thank you, Sam. Harry says, happy Father's Day to my dad, Jamie. Look at that. Gorgeous family. This is Indiana's daddy. Oh, look at that. It's a lot of fun. The Tin Man. And then there's Dad and Indiana on her daddy's shoulders. Love it. This is Dave's dad, Dave, who's a big GB News fan, a man of excellent taste. And look at that lovely pint of Guinness. I could do with a pint of Guinness now. What do you think? I wouldn't say no. Lovely job. Happy Father's Day, Dave. Loved all your pictures. If we don't have time now because we've got to almost the end of the show, but thank you for sending them in. If you didn't get your picture on air, thank you for sending it. And you know what? I'll save them for a year's time. Let's have a look at the Express now, and here is the Monday edition of that paper. Taxpayer will not foot the bill for mortgage bailout. The Treasury has ruled out helping millions struggling with higher mortgage bills, saying it would be dangerous. Also, football legend Graham Souness swims the Channel. OK, next up, let's go to the Times. Prime Minister will skip vote on Johnson Party's dossier. Rishi Sunak is expected not to vote this is a vote, of course, to condemn Boris Johnson tomorrow, as the former Prime Minister's allies prepare to claim his punishment leaves ministers vulnerable to the same treatment. AI risk is growing, says Sunak's new advisor, talking about artificial intelligence, basically computers, all that kind of stuff. Britons to be priority on council house lists. British citizens will be prioritised for council housing under plans being considered by ministers to address concerns over migration. Let's get reaction to all of those stories from my top pundits. I'm delighted to say we have Lord Taylor, Lynn May and Michael Crick. And Lynn May, quick reaction to that headline in the Times. Britons to be prioritised on council house lists. Your reaction?
I'm glad about that. And as you know, I've been working in housing for over 10 years.
Yeah.
So I think this... I'm so happy about this, to be honest with you, because there is so many people that have been, waiting on the housing list for over 10 years. And it is disappointing and disheartening to see people that, often come in the country. I understand many of them have great needs. However, I do believe in putting the British people first. So I'm happy about this.
There you go. Well, let's now get to my brilliant pundits' nominations for their headline heroes and back page zeros of the day. Lord Taylor, who is your headline hero? Who's caught your eye today?
My headline hero is Joan Willett. She's 106 years old and she's a fundraiser for the British Heart Foundation. And when my mother had a stroke, she was a volunteer with patients who had heart problems. And, it's an issue that's close to my heart. So, that's my headline hero.
That's a wonderful nomination. OK, who should we go to next for their headline hero? Lynn May, who's caught your eye today?
My headline hero is Martin Ward. And as you know, I'm into fitness and we are facing an obesity crisis here. And doctors actually told him you shouldn't ever try and run again. He had collapsed lungs. He was extremely overweight and he went on to run many marathons and he lost 4 stone. So sometimes doctors don't know best.
No, well done. He's an inspiration to all of us. Mark Ward, well done. Michael Crick, who's your headline hero?
Well, it's the families of the students and the older gentlemen who were murdered in the appalling spree in Nottingham a few days ago. And the speeches they have made at those vigils are just quite extraordinary. And the love, really. I mean, just instead of being angry about what happened, there's a spirit of decency and tolerance And I was just bowled over by it. I mean, they are the best speeches you will hear this year. And if everybody was like that, and trying to be a bit more understanding of what happened, I've got to be careful what I say here, because, you know, a trial is waiting. I just think the way they responded was out of this world, and the you know, at such a difficult time to make speeches like that was just incredible.
Correct. Remarkable people going through an unimaginable grief. OK, let's have a look now at our pundits' back page zeros. Lord Taylor, who's caught your ire today?
Well, my back page baddie is Vladimir Putin for, you know, this war that's ongoing, illegal invasion of Ukraine. It's creating havoc across the world in terms of trade and energy. However, I feel that we do need to start talking about what peace looks like. And there's a glimmer of hope in that some of the African leaders are trying to broker some sort of deal between Ukraine and Russia. You know, Matthew 5, verse 9, blessed are the peacemakers. This war can't go on forever. We need to start looking at solutions.
Are you hopeful of some resolution this side of Christmas?
I'd like to say yes, you know. It's faith, not fear. We do need a resolution. And the fact that there are talks is something.
Yeah, the talks is important. Look, only a few seconds left. Michael Crick, who's your back page zero?
Nadine Dorries for moaning and whinging about not having a peerage when she was one of the worst cabinet ministers in recent times. She promised to resign and allow there to be a by-election, and she hasn't.
Harsh but fair. And finally, Lynn May, you get the last word.
Mine is Diane Abbott for advocating for abortion up until birth. I think that's horrific, disgusting, and it shouldn't take place.
Can I thank my fantastic pundits? Really enjoyed your company tonight. Lord Taylor, Lynn May, Michael Crick, and also my brilliant team for working so hard. Jane, Cal, Mescana, Maddie and the gang. And most importantly to you for watching and listening. We're back on Friday at 9. Headliners is next.
Hello there, I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your GBNews weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Some of us may have seen some lightning strikes and heard a few rumbles of thunder to end Sunday. It's all due to this area of low pressure that is sat just to the west of the UK, but it's bringing unsettled conditions across many areas. And we will continue to see some of those thunderstorms track northwards as we head throughout the rest of Sunday evening. Increasingly though into the overnight period, it's less the thunder and more this band of heavy rain that becomes our issue. Tracking across northern England into Scotland, again, some heavy rain, around half a month's worth of rainfall for some areas could cause some surface water issues. Turning drier to the south of that through the early hours of Monday morning, most of our towns and cities holding up around 15, 16 degrees Celsius, so a relatively mild start to the new working week. But it's going to be a wet one across Scotland, with that rain gradually tracking its way northwards. Drier to begin the day for everywhere else, but increasingly into the afternoon we'll again see a scattering of heavy showers developing, some thunderstorms also possible, but a bit more sunshine in between those showers on Monday, and in that sunshine we'll see temperatures climbing to highs of 22, 26 degrees Celsius. Into Monday evening, those showers will gradually clear their way off. It will take some time for parts of Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, but generally into Tuesday morning it will turn drier here as well. Another humid night for many of us, some mist and fog forming, but into Tuesday we're then watching this area of heavy rain that's going to start pushing in from the south. There is still some uncertainty in regards to the exact details of this, so do stay up to date with the forecast, but we are expecting it to generally push northwards